Andy, let me start with you here on this. Is the timing here, with a big Asia trip coming up, the thing that saves Rex Tillerson for now? Is this a relationship that the White House has to figure out how to repair, or at this point, actually, do they need to figure out an exit strategy?
Well, I'm hoping that Rex Tillerson stays on. He demonstrates the courage to speak truth to power. I would suggest that he be very careful with his words in the venues where he uses them. He probably should be shutting the door and talking with the president directly about some of these things rather than having an audience that likes to leak, if that's in case what happened. At any rate, I'm a Rex Tillerson fan. There is a big trip coming up. The president will need his Secretary of State by his side to help him on that trip. So I do think this is not the best time to make a change at the State Department. But you have to remember, everybody who serves in the cabinet or in a White House position serves at the pleasure of the president for the time being. There is no security in the appointment to the office. But your job is not to suck up to the president and try to earn his pleasure. Your job is to speak truth to power and help the president do a very tough job. But words do matter, and people should be very careful with the words they use. I always telling the president he should be more careful. The same applies to every member of the cabinet and senior White House staffers as well.
David, you have sources all around the world. I am curious, what are other countries' diplomats, how do they view Rex Tillerson, and how do they review the relationship between the president and Rex Tillerson, and is it a relationship that the world thinks is going to be repaired?
Tillerson generally gets good reviews from the diplomats, foreign officials that I talk to. They think he's mature, sensible. They enjoy their conversations with him. They're worried about the State Department. The State Department's being hollowed out. They're not people to contact for many embassies here in Washington. The people really have been struck by that. This White House is a puzzle for every foreign ministry. People early on thought the path to the president is Jared Kushner. There was a queue to line up.
Early on, there wasn't there?
To see Jared Kushner.
Which, by the way, didn't go over well with Rex Tillerson, did it?
Tillerson and Kushner in that early period, I think, actually were cooperating. I think Kushner was trying to be seen as facilitating Tillerson, helping him out. They may have been papering over early differences, but that was the game. If you want to get to Trump, go through Kushner, but Tillerson was seen as an experienced person who knew the world. After all, Tillerson has been negotiating with foreign officials for more than 20 years. He knows them personally.
But I guess the question is, whether they like him or not, do they believe he speaks for the president?
I think at this point, no one would believe that he speaks for the president. I think.
Can you have a Secretary of State that is in a position like that?
Not for long. I mean, the essence of Tillerson's problem is that to establish himself as Secretary of State, a credible leader of the department, he has to speak more. He has to speak to journalists. He has to speak to foreign officials. He has to just be a more present, communicative secretary. But with such a prickly president, who obviously has deep misgivings about Tillerson. Every word he utters risks triggering the final breach. He's in an impossible situation in that sense. It can't continue in this situation for long, but I think it will continue until the Asia trip is finished. Tillerson has been setting the table for that. The president really wants it to be successful. I can't imagine them making a change.
Logistically, it seems impossible.
Well, it just, Tillerson was just in Beijing a week ago, getting ready for the trip. It'd be hard to imagine them chucking him before the trip is done.
Andy, if you've played the role of chief of staff to a president, as I might remember here, how important is it for John Kelly to try to establish, I mean, it seems as if, look, Rex Tillerson is just the latest staffer to be caught disparaging the president in some way or another. In this case, it wasn't a blind quote, it's perhaps a leak. But we've seen the blind quotes. How much is it, do you think, should fall on the chief of staff to sort of root all this out?
the Chief of Staff has a huge responsibility to basically address these challenges. Some of them are rumors, and he has to decide whether they're fact or fiction, but deal with it even if it's just a rumor. And yes, I suspect General Kelly is doing a tremendous job right now of calming the waters, talking to people, introducing discipline, not just to the structure of the White House or the process, but also the discipline of respect, kind of disciplining people to have respect for the burden the president carries and the challenge of doing a job to serve the president. So I suspect he's very busy. I think he's up to that task. In fact, I think he's about the best person to do it right now.
Let me ask you it this way, Andy. There was, when General McChrystal was his staff essentially disparaged the vice president and in some ways the president at the time, President Obama, former Vice President Biden, former President Obama. The decision was made, you couldn't have that, somebody doing that to the commander-in-chief essentially, and it was, he had to be fired. That was essentially, do you think what Rex Tillerson did is a fireable offense?
I kind of hope not. It probably is something done out of frustration if it happened at all, but I can understand the frustration. There's supposed to be tension between the president and the leaders of his advising team. They're not supposed to think monolithically. They're not supposed to necessarily all agree on what the decision should be, but once the decision is made, they should agree to implement it and implement it with enthusiasm and confidence. So I like having a little bit of friction among the senior staff and among the cabinet. I just don't want it to spill outside of that little circle. And I think John Kelly understands that. He's actually witnessed that in a very positive way in the military, where you do debate these strategic issues and try not to have them impact the tactical execution to get to the strategic outcome that the president wants.
If Mike Pompeo is indeed the person that the president right now, I think there's a lot of thought that the president has developed a personal rapport with him. I think they do see more eye to eye ideologically in some of these issues internationally, including Iran, for instance. What would you make of that?
Pompeo has been unusual as a CIA director in that he has real political engagement with the president and the White House. I think he does see
even more so than Brennan Obama, and they were very tight.
They were tight, but you know there's a notion that the CIA really should be separate. It's there to analyze, there to guide policymakers. You know, CIA officials always say we're not policymakers. Well, Pompeo's been in there not simply for the intelligence briefings, but for the discussions that surround them. I think he would function smoothly with the president. Let's not forget that the president, when he gave a speech at the UN General Assembly, seemed to be absolutely over the top in enthusiasm for Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley did a star turn that week, and so I wouldn't overlook the possibility she'd come.
The Mike Pence comment that was in the story that where the vice president had to essentially chastised the spokesperson for Tillerson for saying, I didn't say that, and then he said he spoke out of turn. There's an appearance of tension between, say, Nikki Haley and Mike Pence, apparently.
That comment was one of the, in this whole strange story, that was a
See, I'm thinking New Hampshire 2024, where Andy is right now, when I hear Haley, Pence, but anyway, I
think Pompeo, in terms of policy fit, just sort of instinctive, being a pair with the president, it's easy to imagine that. He would speak for the president abroad in a way that Tillerson can't.
Andy, speak quickly to this issue of you can have an acting HHS secretary and not worry that if you're going to make a change at the State Department, it has to be fairly deliberate before you make the change, no?
Absolutely. And, the president does have the ability to put some into an acting position that has been confirmed by the Senate. So he doesn't have to stick within kind of one area of discipline.
So he could actually make Pompeo acting because he's been confirmed in another job by the Senate?
I believe that the Constitution gives the president the authority to do that.
That's interesting.
He wouldn't have,
even outside
he would have
the
to be
department.
confirmed for that position, but he could be I believe he could be an acting person. Although I'm hoping that Rex Tillerson stays, I really am, and I think Mike Pompeo does an outstanding job as well. And Nikki Haley is a star. She is a real star of the administration. So I like to see the team working together rather than fighting for new positions. Do the job you're in until you can't do it anymore.
Well, I think you guys have both convinced me. that November Asia trip, Rex Tillerson better be on his best behavior. Anyway, David Ignatius, Andy Card. Gentlemen, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.